Hi, and welcome to the ADHD Dopamine Collective. I'm Rhonda Essling, licensed therapist, late-in-life diagnosed ADHDer, and mom, struggling to figure it out right alongside you. This is a space for women who get it, the struggles, the wins, and everything in between. Let's get into it. Hello, welcome to the ADHD Dopamine Collective podcast. My name is Rhonda Essling, licensed therapist, ADHD coach, and consultant. And today I'm here with Chandran Lapel. She's a licensed therapist, former athlete, coach on all levels of the game. She's currently working at the community college level, doing therapy and groups with college students, young college students. Mm-hmm. And she's my go-to with all things youth sports, how to support my neurodivergent self and family in the youth sports world. And I love that she has insight from all sort of different roles and levels within that field.
Sure. Yeah.
So, Shan, do you want to share a little bit about yourself? I know I can't not call you Shan.
That's okay. That's okay. I'll take it. I'm very used to it. I'm very used to it. So I grew up in a very kind of sports-minded family. Sports are always kind of a big part of our life. I have 7 older siblings, and so it's just a lot of sports going on. And obviously I got into sports at a very young age, connected with it. I had a lot of wonderful experiences growing up, and it was just kind of my thing, you know. And so I knew that I wanted to play collegiately. I ended up playing at the University of St. Thomas. I played softball there and had a wonderful experience there as well. A very competitive program, a very successful program. I did some coaching throughout my college career as well, just T-ball, Little League, kind of things like that. And then once I graduated, I worked up to coaching high school. I've done, JV. I've been an assistant varsity. I've been a head varsity coach. And I'm also a licensed therapist. And so, like you said, I kind of have a unique perspective in some capacities because I've been a coach, I've been an athlete, I'm also a therapist, and I see how to support that side of things and the mental health side of things. And now I'm parenting my own children who are engaging in sports and involved in the youth sports world. So I've learned a lot as a parent. I certainly can learn more. It's interesting. I think, when my oldest kind of started playing, it was like, I know this world. I'm comfortable with this world, which is true to some capacity, but I've never been a parent in this world.
Yeah, this is a different
So it's
side.
different. It's different. Yes. So I'm still learning a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just are you a parent in that world, but you're kind of a sideline parent.
Yeah.
You're not as involved as maybe you once would have been. And I know we've had some conversations about why you made that choice, which made a lot of sense to me at the time. But I do want to, before we kind of go down that route, circle back to your experience in college. I know that you shared that something about that experience felt different for you. And I just wonder if you could share.
Yeah. So I was really lucky to have a coach and a coaching staff really that talked a lot about the mental side of the game and was very sports psychology minded. And we did a lot of things in that world that I reflect back on, and I didn't really realize it was for my mental health, but it certainly was. I remember having a kind of moment in graduate school when we were talking about mindfulness. And I was like, oh, I was doing this in college all the time. And I didn't really realize that it was really for my mental health. And certainly it was, from a sports psychology perspective to help with performance and, regulation before performing and things like that. But ultimately, it's a skill that is not just for sports, right? It's a skill that we can use all the time. And so things like that, progressive muscle relaxation, and just like mental health check-ins, really like, what am I feeling in my body? Why am I feeling this way? I remember, especially my first year, like it was a very competitive program. It was a very successful program. And so there's high expectations. And so going to practice sometimes was anxiety provoking. Like, what are we going to do in practice today? Because we knew we were going to be pushed to the limit. And so I think reflecting back on those years, it's like, yes, we were being pushed and challenged all the time, but we also had this other mental health support to be like, but I can do this and I can handle it and I'm capable of working through it. And that's not present in every program, right? And so I'm just lucky to have that experience.
Yeah. And I want to reflect back just for the listeners that we will have more podcasts related to mindfulness and being present, because traditional mindfulness techniques don't work for actually a lot of neurodivergent people. The idea of sitting quietly and emptying your mind and being totally present in the moment feels nearly impossible. But there are lots of ways. Really, the goal just to be even just a little more present in your current experience, what's happening in the moment. And like you said, more insightful about what's going on in your body or your brain. And it's interesting, as you were talking about that, thinking through kind of a lot of high pressure sports situations, regulation is not even a thought.
Right.
Like if a coach is yelling at a kid and they're crying, like there is no regulation in the room. Like nobody's even considering that. So the idea that like regulation was really the core of how that team functioned. Does feel really different.
It does. Yeah. And I think about just like, you know, those skills and I still use those things, right? Like even in my current world, like if I'm having a hard time falling asleep or I'm just like, I need a moment to check in with my body, like that all started from those experiences in college. And like I said, having a coach who prioritized that. And so I'm very grateful for that time and learning those skills. And like I said, it wasn't until later in my life that I was in my therapy training that I was like, oh, these are things that really are helpful across the board, right? And not that it's the same for every person, right? But ultimately, that regulation piece, when you look at, like I said, from a sports psychology lens, it's really hard to perform when you're not aware of what's going on in your body, right? And so it really is pairing both the mental and the physical side together.
Well, not just perform, but learn, connect, grow, develop, right? Like the minute we become dysregulated or flooded, like everything else shuts off.
Yes, absolutely.
So like your ability to pivot or take something in or learn is really
right. Just like thinking about in the middle of a practice, if you are dysregulated and your coach is trying to coach you, right? It's nearly impossible. It's not going to sink in. It's not going to be able to be absorbed. And so it's really important to have the skills sometimes in the moment to say, okay, I'm elevated. What can I do in this moment to kind of bring myself back down, right? And super important.
Yeah. So when did neurodivergence become a part of your story, your family's story? And how did that intersect for you?
So obviously just, you know, from a professional standpoint, like I've worked with children of all ages. I'm working with college students now, but in the past I worked with elementary age students, very little kids. I've worked in residential treatment. And so I've had experience with that too. And so I just kind of across the spectrum very quickly learned about, and obviously in school, but in a practice perspective of like, this is what's happening. These are some of the challenges certain kids have. And so I very quickly learned, even from a coaching perspective, like kids are different, kids function differently, right? And they have different needs. And I'll kind of touch on that more later, but in my own home, there is neurodivergence, and it's something that we work through every single day. And, you know, I think as a parent, I knew how to handle these things as a therapist, but it's different when you're a parent.
100%.
And so, and in that case, I've had to really kind of like check myself a little bit of like, these are things I see with the clients I work with. Why is it so difficult for me to like transition this into my own home, right? And I did struggle initially kind of like assisting or supporting and helping because, you know, we want the best for our kids all the time and we want things to be so wonderful for our kids all the time. And the reality is like there's going to be bumps and there's going to be challenges and every kid has challenges and that's okay, right? And so as, you know, in our household, as we've kind of started to talk more about brains function differently and, you know, my kids are starting to get old enough, especially the older two, of like, there are differences in kids and even them recognizing things, right?
Yeah.
In school or their friends or whatever. And so, and then again in themselves, we all have, our brains are different and that's okay. And like embracing those changes and those challenges too, because there's a lot of strengths that are present as well. And so kind of like having those conversations of, even though this could be a challenge, like these other things are so amazing that you bring to the table, and supporting that too. And it's been kind of a collaborative effort, I would say,
yeah,
of support and understanding and education. And we're all like in it together. I say that all the time. Like we're all in this together. Yeah.
Well, and this is something I can share
Yeah.
about our relationship.
Yeah.
Because we have kids that play on the same softball team, apparently, and which is how she became my go-to. But also for me, there's been this really big pull to create a neurodivergent, safe and friendly environment group. I kind of have a sanctuary in my backyard that like a big part of the motivation was to create a space where we could all be like our neurospicy selves. And like inevitably we'll all be hanging out and some kids having a meltdown and, you know, some other kids like, oh, so-and-so's having a hard time today. Last time it was me. Like
100%.
It is very non-judgmental. Nobody's screaming at their kids. Like we all just know, like, we take care of each other's kids and like you need a popsicle.
Right. You need a hug, whatever it is.
Right. Because I do, especially when it comes to neurodivergent kids, which in a lot of other areas of their life, they can feel really othered.
Yeah.
It's so important to sort of have a community where not only do your kids know that they can be themselves, but as a parent, you can like collaboratively figure like how many conversations have we had?
Many.
Not just between the two of us, but other parents too, about like what's working, what's not working, how we're thinking about things. Because it's like relearning everything.
100%.
I feel like.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about that, like in our home and as a parent, like I'm trying to do things so different and relearn everything now that I know what I know about myself and my kids. But then you get into this like sports world. It feels like there's a lot of conflict between people trying to do it differently and a very traditional mindset. On the same teams, in the same program. Like it feels like there's a lot of conflict with that and how to handle those situations. And I know that's like a very convoluted question, but like what's your experience of that? As you said, you're trying to learn collaboratively to do this in a different way.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think back to like when I was coaching, like especially at the high school level of like, there were lots of moments and practices where I was like, okay, I have to take my coaching hat off for a minute and like put my therapy hat on a little bit, like, and being able to navigate those moments as it's happening. But I kind of had the luxury of having this training, right? Not all of these coaches do, right? And we wouldn't expect them to. So I think that can be difficult too, of like, we can only expect coaches to do so much, right? To create a supportive environment, 100%, right? Create a welcoming, positive environment, of course, but like a lot of these coaches don't have the specialized training of skill building and all these things for every kid on their team, right? And I think one of the things that I, as a parent, have tried to kind of recognize is just that. Like, if there's moments where I can support, I'm going to step in and help, whether it's talking to a coach about something or just talking to my kid about something, right? But ultimately, like, coaches are not, sometimes they're volunteering their time.
They're not usually in our
right. They're volunteering their time. They already have a million other things going on. And so having to kind of manage all of the things going on in the team with all of these different kids is a huge challenge. It is. And so I think if I was going to say one thing to coaches, it's just that like, we don't expect you to be able to know how to navigate all these things perfectly. Right. And like, that is not the expectation I have for coaches.
We don't know how to navigate it perfectly.
Right. Exactly.
There are kids in our homes every day.
Yes. And I think like opening that conversation with coaches the earlier that you can, the better. And it's not like, hey, I'm telling you what to do, but I'm saying like, these are some of the challenges my kid has. Like, I'm open to having more conversation about this to help and support this. And also just that it doesn't have to be anything crazy or, over the top, but just opening the conversation can be helpful, right? Of this is kind of how my kid experiences things. This is how my kid functions. And I think that's beneficial because coaches, they have a lot on their plates. We can't expect them to know how to, like I said, navigate every single situation with every single kid, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. That's really helpful because, as you know, too, like I've been very transparent with coaches and teachers and like, as I'm trying to figure these things out with my kiddo, also helping give them the tools to support my kiddo. And that's sometimes received differently.
Yeah, of course.
And certainly received differently from other parents.
Yes.
So is there sort of and I know this is nuanced,
Mm-hmm.
but like how much feels appropriate, how much is like making excuses, or it
Right.
feels like unhelpful,
Yep.
or you kind of have to let your kid
Mm-hmm.
figure it out
Right.
too, right?
Yep. Yep. I think that's a good point. And that's tricky.
Yeah.
Like that balance can be really tricky. One of the things I think like is helpful, you know, and even talking to my kids is like anytime that they are working with another adult, right? Whether it's a coach, a teacher, or whatever, I want them to feel like they can go to that person if they need something, right? And I think the more that we empower our children to have conversation and communication, especially as they get older, like that is number one, in my opinion. I remember working and coaching with coaching high school kids, and some of them really struggled to come to me. And I'm like, I don't think I'm scary. Like, I don't think I'm a scary person, but they just didn't feel comfortable coming to talk to me about things. And I remember actually in a practice, I said to my team, like, do you all know what I do for a living? And they're like,
It's
no.
kind of my thing.
And I was like, actually, I'm a therapist. So like, if there's struggles, if there's things that you're, not sure about, like, I am happy to have those conversations. And so I think that the more we empower our own kids to have those conversations with those adults, like that's a huge skill. It's a huge skill that can help them for the rest of their lives. And so, yes, I think that there's a balance in, taking, initiative as a parent to open up a conversation, but then also encouraging our kids to say, hey, if you need something, like you are 100% okay to go to your coach and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can we talk through it or whatever? And even my 8-year-old is starting to do those things for herself, whether it's gymnastics or whatever, like she's starting to kind of advocate for herself in a way that I'm like, this is a skill you need for the rest of your life,
Well, and just to share too, a lot of times rejection sensitive dysphoria can be a big part of why it's hard for these kiddos to advocate for themselves. And so it's also totally okay if your kid needs a little extra support in having those conversations. Also, working memory stuff, like oftentimes my kid forgets. Like she could be distraught about something. And then 5 minutes later, totally forget why. Right. And so being able to kind of support them too in, I know that this doesn't seem like a big deal now, or I know that you don't want to make this a big deal because you don't want to be the problem, but encouraging them to learn how to do that anyway. And maybe that does help support the relationship between the coach and the kiddo. Like, would you feel better if I sat with you, or if we had a conversation with the coach? That might help you feel a little bit better. Like you're not going to be judged. You're not going to be rejected. You're not going to be benched because you're having a hard time, right? Because this is a skill that's not easy for a lot of neurodivergent
100%.
kids.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think too, like coaches just being open to those conversations. I think sometimes it can come across as like, I'm trying to take your job, or I'm trying to take over, or things like that. But the reality is, like, sometimes we need outside information. Coaches sometimes need outside information to make decisions about something or to understand something. And that's okay, right? Like as a coach, like give me all the feedback I can get, right? Like I want to take your advice or take your ideas or your supports. When I was a coach, it was a very collaborative thing of like, I want input from my kids. I want input from my other coaches. Like, I think that is the best way to coach, right? Like ultimately, you're kind of in charge, you're making decisions, but from the standpoint of like, we're all trying to work together, right? Like we all hopefully have the same goal, right? That's what you want.
That's what you want.
And that's the environment you want to create. And I know sometimes it doesn't happen, right?
Right. Well, and so that's kind of the flip side. And what about the parent interactions that maybe aren't helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I can attest to and talk about and experience is going back to my college experience. My coach always talked about like, we're in a bubble, right? And like, this is our bubble and we don't want too many people coming into the bubble and trying to burst the bubble, right? And so everything is within reason and with balance, right? So college is a little bit different. Parents aren't super involved at the collegiate level, and it's a little bit more removed. But in high school or younger, it is different. Parents are so much more involved, right? There's snap lists and all the things that come along with trying
Dug out parents,
right? And so they are more involved. And so I think what's helpful is when parents can understand their role, and the role is support, right? The role isn't to take over. The role isn't to make decisions for the team. It literally is just to support. And so, like, what does that look like? And sometimes I think it's helpful for coaches just to set those boundaries, like having a conversation about what that role looks like. If you're a dugout parent, this is what we'd like you to do. If you're bringing snacks or you're around and helping with practice, like, what does it look like to provide support versus like stepping into the bubble, if that makes sense? So I want to support the bubble. I don't want to be in the bubble, right?
Yeah. The ADHD in me loves the idea of clear expectations and boundaries because it can be really tricky for me as a parent to gauge, like, how much help do you need? And what is overstepping? And when should I talk to you and when should I not? And we've been in situations that kind of run the gamut when it comes to that. We
100%.
have been in a situation where the people running the club don't want parents to have access to the coaches. And those are young paid coaches that they're training and trying to, you know, help develop. So in that way, it made sense. But as a parent, that can be really hard, especially if you see things that maybe feel like they're harmful to your kid. Because that, I do think, as a parent, is one of the hardest things with neurodivergent kids, is like some of these things that are really traditional coaching techniques or ways to interact with coaching can be harmful to my neurodivergent kid. And so we've been in situations where, like, no access to the coach. We've been in situations where it's like they understand what's going on, or like, I'm going to look to you to tell me, like, if she should keep going or should I take a break, or like, I've been in situations kind of where my husband's coaching, right, kind of across the board. And so for you, ideally, where's that sweet spot as far as balance?
I think it ultimately goes back to just communication. And that's why I think, again, coaches have so much on their plates. And so it's hard to say, like, this also needs to happen. Like, of all these other things going on, like, you also need to do this, right? But I do think that helps mitigate some of the other things, right? So if you set up these are my clear expectations, these are my clear boundaries, then it just creates clarity, right? And clarity can hopefully help mitigate all of other things that could pop up that then we're spending time trying to navigate, right? And so for me, it goes back to that. And every coach is a little bit different, right? Like, every coach has different kind of ideas about how much parents should be involved, right? Like, I'll be honest, I was kind of especially at the high school level, it's certainly different with younger kids.
Oh, totally.
But like, I don't want a parent coming up in the middle of the game, right? Because I don't know what that conversation looks like. I don't know if you're coaching the kid in the middle of the game. I don't know if you are saying positive. I don't know what you're saying, right? Because I'm coaching and I can't see every single conversation. But like, that was a clear boundary that I set, like, no parents coming to the dugout during a game, right? Now, when you have 8-year-olds and your kid needs a Gatorade or whatever, that's a little different.
She needs her a Gatorade.
Right.
You're in the dugout.
But ultimately, the expectation, even at that level, is kind of still the same in terms of, you can come to the dugout and give them water or whatever, but like, I also don't necessarily want you coaching their swing in the middle of the game. Like, things like that, right? Like, that I think across the board, coaches would kind of be on board with, because ultimately, like, it takes away from them being present and knowing what's going on in the moment with their own game, right? Whether it's softball or basketball or whatever. So I think, like, for me, it goes back to setting those clear boundaries and expectations. And again, every coach is going to be a little bit different with those things. So that's just an example of something that I was pretty strong-minded about. Like, I don't want a bunch, because then it feels like they're coming into the bubble, right? And again, I want support around the bubble. And so support sometimes looks like checking in, sending me an email like, hey, you got a really busy week coming up with games. Is there anything I can help with? You know, things like that, where it's like, it's support, but it's not stepping into the bubble and trying to burst that bubble.
Yeah, I hear that. And I've seen it in real life.
when parents are bursting that bubble.
Mm-hmm.
And even really well-intentioned, trying to
Yeah,
help their kids.
absolutely. Yes.
It becoming this situation where their kids are like constantly looking back and checking in
Yes.
on them.
Yeah.
And as a parent sitting on the sidelines, I'm like, aren't they here playing for themselves?
Yes. Yep.
Right? Are they here having fun with their friends and playing? We're still at that level.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
just having
right.
fun with
Yeah,
our
we want to
friends.
have fun. Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to burn out and
Right.
not play anymore.
Yep.
But yeah, and it just can feel really uncomfortable. Like they're unsure, they're afraid to make a mistake. They, feel like they're being watched. I don't know.
Yeah, I think like that is a good point of like what that makes me think of is like when I think about a kid growing up, starting softball or basketball or whatever at a young age, 6, 7, 8 years old, and going up all the way through high school, some all the way to college. Like it really is like there's different things at each level that become a part of how it works, right? When you're 8 years old, like there shouldn't be pressure, like there shouldn't be this like we have to win or because what the goal shouldn't be that, in my opinion, at that level. Now, does it become more of a goal as you get older? Probably to some extent. But again, it can't be that an 18-year-old kid has the same expectations as an 8-year-old, right? Like as they get older, there's other things that come into play. But when you start an 8-year-old in a really healthy, we're having fun, safe environment, they're going to be much better off at 18 than other kids who are afraid to make a mistake at 8 years old. Or if I don't make this basket or if I don't get this hit, like I'm going to let down the team. Like that is a huge thing for an 8-year-old to handle, right?
Yeah.
Because their brain development isn't there yet. And even at 18, right, it's hard to handle that. So what I'm saying is it's normal for other things to be part of this world as you get older. But again, like an 18, 20-year-old athlete, those expectations are different. The pressures shouldn't be the same at those types of levels. They're vastly different. And yeah, like having that positive, safe environment where kids feel comfortable to make a mistake from a young age is definitely going to benefit them as an athlete in the long run than putting all this pressure on them and challenging them to the point where they're, going to burn out or break, right?
Well, and even as you were talking about that, it occurred to me, like those kids, and I feel like we've been pretty lucky with our kids that are playing together, being in that kind of a situation, which is, I feel like, very rare.
Yes.
Considering our other experiences. Yep. But those kids that know that they can make a mistake and it's fun to challenge themselves.
Yes.
When they really do start getting pushed and challenged, are going to be able to tolerate it so much better. Because 100%. Underneath that, they're still going to be holding on to, like, I'm just challenging myself.
Yes. Yep. And failure is a part of this.
Oh, totally.
Failure is a part of every sport, right? Yeah. And how, like...
Well, and life.
And life. Yes. Big time. Right? And yeah, like creating that environment for kids to feel like this is okay. Yeah, 100% is building lifelong skills. And that's why there are so many wonderful things about sports, right? And if it's done in a healthy way, there's a lot of skill building that can take place in a sports environment and a team environment.
That's such a good transition because that's what I was going to ask about next. Yeah. Like we've talked a lot about, the tricky parts of being a parent in youth sports, how to gauge, how to interact, the struggles like coaches often have in youth sports, but what are the positives, right? I think a lot of us put our kids into sports. Well, number one, especially if they're neurodivergent, because they need the energy outlet and they need the physical movement. Yep. And also the team environment, right? Like the social stuff can be really tricky for some of these kids. It certainly feels tricky for me as an adult.
Yeah.
And so also having a chance to navigate that in that bubble you described is like the ideal.
Right.
So what do you feel like the pros, the positives and the strengths that kids can come away from youth sports with? What should the focus be?
Yeah, I think, well, just building off of what I just said, like being able to make mistakes, knowing that failure is a part of life, like, oh my goodness, how wonderful is that for kids to feel that, right? And, I work with young adults in my practice most of the time. And, you know, there's a difference in kids who like understand like it's okay to fail versus it's not okay to fail, right? Whether that's academically or in a relationship or whatever it may be, that failure is 100% a part of life. And building that idea of if I fail, I'm still going to be okay. Whew, that is like huge, right?
As an adult, I'm like, whew, that one can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That can be really hard sometimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even resiliency, right? There's a lot of resiliency that comes from that. Kids being able to say like, this is really difficult. This is a challenge for me, but I can overcome it. Like I'm capable of overcoming it, right? And, you know, sometimes I think about my own kids and like, they're, you know, I have 3 kids and they're all different, right? And so like, how do they handle those things at this age? And it does look different. But my hope is that, yes, they continue to learn that like life is challenging sometimes, but like I am capable, like that's huge. Or if I don't feel capable, what are the things that I can do to reach out for support? Like that's the other piece of this, in my opinion, of like, if I'm struggling on a team, who can I go to, right? Like what is the skill there of being able to go to a teammate and have a conversation or go to a coach and have a conversation? Like that kind of that teamwork and support thing and working collaboratively with other people. Again, another huge skill that's super important.
People who are different than you. People who maybe go to different schools than you, have different friend groups. I would add, I think as a parent to neurodivergent kids, that is a big piece of the puzzle for me, is also expanding their friend range.
Yes. Yep.
Like my kids do so much better when they have friends from lots of different walks of life. Because when things get really tricky with one, they don't feel totally alone.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point.
Yeah. And so again, as long as that bubble is there and it's not like a toxic environment where they're competing against each other.
Right. Yeah.
If you really do build that bubble of we're cheering for each other and we're growing together and we're in this together, like that piece I think can be so powerful too.
Yeah, I think so. Like I think about my oldest, who is, whether she's in the game or not in the game, like she is wanting her teammates to do the best that they can, right?
Yeah.
And like
they get so
they
excited
do something. I know, and it's just like that's what life should be about, right? Like when someone I care about and someone who I know is working hard at something and they accomplish it or whatever, like cheering so loudly for that other person. And I think sometimes we struggle with that as adults, you know, like, and that's a hard place to be when you feel like, you know, you can't cheer on someone else for doing something well, right? And like, even whether it's your coworkers on a team or your family member or whatever it is, like, it's such an awesome thing to see kids be so excited for other kids.
It might be my favorite part.
Yes.
It's amazing. Favorite part. Like those days where like my kiddo strikes out, but they come out like skipping because their friend got a hit.
Yes.
And they're so excited. And I'm like, okay, we're doing something right.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. Raising those resilient, good teammate.
Yes.
Kids.
Because the reality is like everyone has a different role. Right. And everyone looks at these activities differently, right? Like some kids are in it of like, they love the sport. They love to compete. They love the challenge. And there's other kids who don't see it that way. And that's okay. Right. And like fostering all of that and like everyone has a different role and everyone brings something different to the table, whether it's how they function, whether it's their purpose for being there, like, and it's all accepted like that. That's the best bubble.
The radical acceptance piece.
Right.
Like when you can be in an environment that's like, oh, that's just so-and-so.
Right.
Like, that makes sense.
Right. Yes.
I think I might not have told you this story, but I'll share it now. My kiddo shared a story about being at her softball game in the outfield, and I could tell that she was distracted.
Yeah, it happens.
And then her coach hollered at her, like, you need to back that up every time. And she's like, oh. And so I noticed it. I asked her in the car on the way home, like, what was going on? Why? And it was the second of a doubleheader. It was like 8 o'clock.
A long evening. Yeah.
A long school day.
Yes.
And she was... Sorry. She's totally okay then, I'm sure. Sorry, but I've asked her, but she's like, she got new sunglasses, and they're like the very mirrored baseball glasses. And she's like, this guy was like pink. And it was so pretty. And then I put my glasses on and it wasn't pink. And I took them off and it was pink. And I put them on and it wasn't pink. And then coach yelled at me. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to be playing a softball.
Right here. I'm right here. Yeah. Yeah.
I texted the coach afterwards and I was like, I just wanted to let you know what was going on.
Yeah. What actually was happening. I love that.
And I appreciate that you hollered at her and like reminded her she's in the middle of the game without shaming her.
Yes. Absolutely.
About like, you need to get your head in the right. Like,
there's a way to do it.
That's a squirrel moment in her brain. And instead of shaming her about focusing when she's in the outfield, we instead focus on she's usually pitching or catching.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because
that's totally different.
She needs that to like keep her focus and stay in the game. So for us, it's like figuring out how to work with her.
Yeah.
Instead of shaming her for things that aren't necessarily within her control.
Exactly.
Like a really pink sky.
Yeah.
Just
I wouldn't want to look at that. Yeah.
And then her glasses were being weird. And then she just was curious. Her little curious
That's
brain.
fair.
But like that acceptance of like, that's just kind of her.
Yeah. And I think like from a coaching perspective, that's a learning moment for the coach too of like, okay, if I put this kid in the outfield and they're used to pitching or catching, how do we make it so that they can still be present in the moment, right? Because that's a very different position to be in, right? Like you might not get a ball all game. It depends on the game, right? And like, you know, I think about my oldest who's in gymnastics and there's a lot of wait time, right? Mm-hmm. And what does wait time look like? And like, the coach might be coaching the person that's currently on the bars, but my kid is fifth in line, right? And so he might be saying something that's really valuable to my kid, but she's not paying attention because she has this wait time where she could look at a million other things, right? And so we've even talked about like, what could you be doing to kind of stay locked in? And even if it's like, hey, I'm counting in my head, like that keeps me locked in, or I'm moving my feet in a way that keeps me locked in, right? Mm-hmm. Like those are all coaching, like learning moments for a coach to say, hey, I have a kid who struggles with that wait time stuff. What does it look like to support that kid in that moment, whether it's at practice or during a game or whatever, right? Because we know practices there's going to be wait time. When a coach is coaching or the practice gets stopped to talk about something and address something, I can certainly see my kids start to wander, right? So let's talk about what skills could you be using during those moments, because those moments happen all the time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think now that reflecting back as we're talking about it, like he handled it perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you need to be backing up that throw to third every single time.
Yep. And that prompt alone is perfect.
Yeah. Like it gave her direction. Mm-hmm. Like this is what you need to be doing so you can stay in the game. Yep. Or the talking, right? Like she's kind of the quarterback of the team.
Yeah.
So she's always like hollering out like who's where. And that's part of how she also stays focused and in the game. And so being able to figure out those ways to support instead of change.
Right.
Because some of that's unchangeable.
Yep.
Like she's going to be the kid in the outfield who's looking at the pretty pink sky.
Yes.
I don't want to change that about her.
No, absolutely.
Nor is it probably changeable.
Right. And I think like from the lens of like, those moments are inevitable, right? Like those are going to happen all the time. And like, there's a way to bring a kid back without shaming them.
Right.
Right. Like, and that's, you know, and it's just about language. It's the way you communicate something. You might have the same intention behind the communication, but it can just look so different, you know? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that too, you know, speaks to another point, which is coach and parent regulation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's really hard to meet something like that with the tools and skills that actually are going to support and help that kid if you yourself are dysregulated.
Right. Yep.
Right. When we talk at a coach about a coach, like yelling at a kid because they're not paying attention.
Right.
Yeah, you might scare them and like startle them into paying attention, but you're not actually teaching them how to direct their focus, like you said. Yep. But if you're dysregulated, you're not, you like think that far ahead.
Yep. And that's why, like, even when I was talking about, you know, the skill work that, you know, we did at the collegiate level, like, again, these are skills that are really just important as a human, right? Like learning to regulate it and also to recognize what it looks like when you're not regulated, right? What are the warning signs in my body? And I think that's really important as a coach because as we all know, like people are competitive, right? And that's a part of this world. And so how do we foster that in a way that is comfortable and okay and safe, right? Versus, you know, being dysregulated and yelling at a kid who's, already on the verge of tears or whatever, right? And so I think even just from being a human, right, we have to learn these skills. And so, and sometimes you had mentioned, like, I'm more a sideline parent, right? Like I have kind of certainly stepped way back from my coaching world. And there's been certainly opportunities that have been presented to me that I've kind of said, no, I'm going to stay back and hang back. And like part of that decision is because I'm really competitive.
And you won't be regulated.
I won't always be regulated if I am super involved. And I know, but I know that about myself. And so I think like, that's why I've made the decision. And I think, I hope that in some capacity I can there's a balance, right? And maybe in the future that I can get back into coaching in some capacity and be able to have my kid there and it is an okay thing. But like, I just left, coaching at the high school level, and to step into youth sports, I'm like, I know that I'm going to just be like, that's not my space right now. Right. And so I had to learn some things for myself of like, what is good for me? And what's good for me right now is to have space from being in the dugout or being on the field, because ultimately, like, I am a competitive person and I want to see my kid do well. I want to see her team do well. But allowing me to step back has been it's been so good for me in the sense of like, I just now see, like, I just get excited for them. I get excited for them as a team, no matter what's going on. Like, I love seeing how much fun they have together. Like, them singing in the dugout or whatever. Like, that has been a healthy thing for me. And I'm glad that I made that decision, because I know that I do know that it would have been different if I had stepped right from coaching high school, varsity to 8U. Like, I would have had to really figure some things out. And I think it would have been hard for me. And so I knew that about myself. I made that decision. I kind of set that boundary, and I think it's been good for me, but also probably good for my kid. Right.
Well, I was going to say, as a parent who also generally stays to the sideline.
Yeah.
My husband's the one that he coaches sometimes, but also likes to be like the dugout dad.
Yeah, absolutely.
He needs a job. But I also know and all of my kids are different.
Yep.
But that oftentimes my full-time job is to be available for emotional regulation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to be clocking like their physical needs because the interception is a problem.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we need to drink something. Yeah. Maybe we need to eat something. Maybe we need some like electrolytes here because especially on those really hot days,
long days. Yeah.
Like, it feels like a full-time job to be sort of the emotional regulation as well as these like executive functioning things
100%.
for our kids, especially when they're hard for us.
Yes.
And so adding a role of feeling responsible as well for like coaching the whole team, I would imagine that would feel like a lot.
Yes. Yeah. And I think like it reminds me a little bit, this is more about from a player perspective, but I certainly also think it can apply to coaches and parents. Like, we used to talk a lot about something called hype level. Like, every person is different with what level they need to be at to like do their best. Mm-hmm. Some kids need to come into like a game or a practice at like a 2. Like, I'm calm, I'm regulated, and this is where I'm going to be able to learn and be coached and do what I need to do. Some kids need to be at like a 10. Like, they're like jamming out to music. They are like, before whatever it is. And so like even teaching that skill is important of like, where do you need to be at to be able to be engaged with what you're doing? Yeah. I think that is such a like an important piece of the puzzle, because it, like I said, it's certainly, I've coached it from the athlete standpoint, but I think there's an element of like, for our coaches and parents too, like, what do you need before you're going to watch your kid perform? Yeah. Right. Whether that's in sports or on stage or whatever, right? Because ultimately we know if we see a kid doing something on the stage or on the field or on the court, like, we have those internal things that happen to us. Our nervous system gets dysregulated, right? We get nervous for them, whatever. And that's all normal, right? That's all normal. But sometimes I think that kind of that hype level stuff can be applied to other people in this kind of situation, Yeah, no, I was actually going to ask you about when we talk about regulation, I would imagine
being regulated looks different for every team and every kid.
Yeah.
And also doesn't necessarily mean, so let me just give some context of like where this question is coming from. Like my kiddos have been on high energy teams. They've been on really low energy teams. And the low energy teams, not a great fit for my kids because they do need a higher hype level. But they also can get really dysregulated if it gets too, right? Like they also need to be slowed down a lot. But I think regulation looks different in different levels, right? And there are different fits when it comes to that. Can you speak to maybe those differences or how to be able to tell kind of if regulation's there or not on the team level?
I think one of the things that I immediately think of is like when I was coaching this one specific team, they had kind of like a routine before their games, right? Like listen to music. They would like, I don't know, I kind of let them do it. Like just like an observer, right? They had a whole system, but there was 2 girls in particular that like really didn't do well with that. And so they chose to separate themselves and they would put their earbuds in and like be sitting on the bench, like prepping for the game. And it caused some conflict at first between the girls because I had one of my like kind of leaders on the team come to me and say like, well, we feel like strongly that they should be a part of the team in this process. Like this is a team thing. And, you know, I kind of validated that. Like, I get that from a team perspective, you want everyone to be involved. But then we talked about hype level, right? Like what they need before a game is different than what you guys need. And that's okay, right? And like just supporting them taking their space because they felt like, I can't do all of this.
I was going to say they couldn't be a part of that team.
Right, exactly.
That team wasn't for them.
Yes.
If that's what it required.
And so we had a conversation about it as a team. And once that was kind of the explanation, I just kind of said, like, we all have different levels where we need to be. And once that was communicated to the team, they're like, oh, that totally makes sense, right? And so from then on, it wasn't an issue. But the first couple of games, it was like, what are they doing over there? Why were they not part of this? And so we addressed it. We worked through it. Like even just educating the team on that was so helpful. And it helped those other 2 feel like, oh, this is okay now. Like everyone sees this as safe and it's what I need. And that's okay if it's different than the rest of the team.
I was going to say you made space for what everybody needed. And that sort of radical acceptance piece that I think is often missing.
If you think about like, I don't know, when you see like clips of even like major league people, right? Like when they're getting ready for games and they're suiting up and stuff like that, they're all doing different things, right? Like some have headphones on, some are chatting with their teammates, some are listening to me. Like everyone's kind of doing a different thing. And that's just further kind of, you know, validates this point that everyone needs something different to get ready to kind of go out and do what they're going to do. And so even at that level, it looks different, right? And like being able to foster that from a young age of it's okay if what you need looks different than your teammate.
Right. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
How, as a parent, can you sort of assess whether a situation is good for your kid or not? Or maybe even in the decision-making process, like say you're trying out for a couple different teams and I know we don't always know who the coach is going to be or what the team's going to feel like, but it is our job, especially as parents of neurodivergent kids, to ensure that we're making the best possible decisions we can about the environments we're putting them in. So how would you sort of navigate that?
I think like a big question that we use a lot in our household and even just like how I check in is like not asking, what did you think about that? But like when you left, how did you feel?
Ooh, love that.
That to me is more important. Like I have had situations in my life where I have been playing on different teams and even at the collegiate level, I was playing softball, but I also started, and this is kind of a lot, but like when I went to St. Thomas, I was recruited to do basketball and softball both. And I just had a very different feel. Like I felt different when I was in one program versus the other.
Okay.
And like that, again, that experience for me was like a light bulb moment of like, I feel good in this environment. And so I think that's very real for our kids. Like asking that question, like not just, what did you think of that, but how do you feel after leaving, having those experiences? And I think, again, that sometimes it's hard for young kids to identify that.
Yeah,
right?
I was going to say, but as a parent, we can sometimes observe.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, is our kid leaving that situation feeling dysregulated? In the situation, do they seem so dysregulated that they can't take in the coaching?
Yes.
Or can't like play at their best level?
Yeah. So I think it's twofold, right? Like, you know your kids, right? You can see when they're struggling and when they're not struggling, or maybe when they're dysregulated or they feel defeated, or, you know, any of those things. Like, you can see that, you can sense that. And so when you have those conversations, it's, again, it goes back to that like collaborative piece of like, I want my kids' input, but I'm also keeping in mind what I just observed and what I witnessed. And like, I think just being in tune to that. And that's why, like, I think it's so important. And I'm not perfect at this, obviously. I'm a social human being. And so when I'm at games, sometimes I'm chatting, you know, and I'm not paying attention to every little thing. But I also, like, especially with, you know, our kids on their team, like, I don't worry at this point, right, of like any of those things. But if it's something new, I try to be really in tune with what's going on. Like, when she first started gymnastics, I was like, you know, I had my book with me and stuff like that, but I'm locked in. Because I want to know, I want to see what's going on. I want to really observe what she's doing and what she's experiencing so that I can have an idea of where things are at for her. Yeah. And if this is a good fit. And so.
But that might not be healthy as an all the time thing.
Right.
But as those like check-in things, it's really funny because you totally caught me at practice the other day. Like, my kid did something really good and my back was like to it.
Right.
It was like the end of practice. They were playing a game, but we were chatting and you're like, and I was like,
And that's what's so cool about supporting our neurodivergent kids in sports and celebrating the learning that happens in both the wins and the losses. A big thanks to Chandran for sharing her insights as an athlete and a coach. Here's the thing. The same brain wiring we talked about today for our kids is running in a lot of us moms too. Your brain isn't broken. It's running on a different operating system, and it responds to the same things a young athlete's does. Interest, novelty, a real challenge. If this one hits home, do two things. Follow the ADHD Dopamine Collective so the next episode finds you. And send this to one other mom who needs to hear it. That is how more women find this work. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for being here. If this episode hit home for you, share it with someone else who may need to hear it. And come find the rest of the conversation. All of my links are in my Linktree / Rhonda Essling ADHD Coach. I'll see you next time.